UCF fans, this is Brian Smith with another edition of the Daily Night. I am also the publisher at Inside the Nights on Fan Nation, powered by Sports Illustrated. Today, I want to talk a little bit about yesterday's performance against the UConn Huskies, how that translates into the game coming up this next Friday, the war on I-4, and all the things that kind of encompassed this past week or so with injuries and whatnot with UCF football. So, with that, a couple of just notes. I've got some statistics up here on my page. Want to go over some of the things, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that. But there's mostly just good, really, with how UCF played yesterday. And I'm going to talk about each one individually and then bring it into the war on I-4 and everything that goes with it, because that's just what college football is about. There's nothing better than rivalry. So Ohio State, Michigan's great, and everybody else can talk about different games. Those are fun too. But UCF and USF do not like each other. The fan bases don't like each other. Nothing about it is very friendly. So we'll get into that at the back half in seconds, the second stanza of the show. Here are a couple of the things that stood out to me with UCF's win. Number one, they got up 21-0 before you could say hello. They were focused. And I wrote about that this past week. Will UCF be focused when they play against the Huskies? I didn't know. Nobody did. And you can only project so much. We're talking about college football players. It's not the same as pro. Usually week to week, even if they're coming off a loss, they can flip the switch a little bit differently. That's why they're pro players. College, however, UCF or otherwise, you see a lot of fluctuation. Players fail. They come into a game thinking they're going to win. They take somebody for granted. Boom. Tatum Bethune basically said as much about SMU, and that was a big mistake, obviously, as SMU just blew UCF out of the water. Perhaps SMU did that yesterday when they played up at Cincinnati, because they were dismantled there too. I believe they were down at one point like 27-0 or something like that. If you do not take every opponent seriously, it can cost you. So with that being stated, just kind of looking at the way the game went, a couple of notes early on. Again, 21-0 speaks volumes. But Mikey Keene was 23 of 29 for 208 yards, 2 touchdowns. Part of those are those little just forward tosses. It's basically a handoff. I understand that. But it shows that they understand what they need to do. Sometimes it's that simple. If a team can't stop what you're doing, continue to use it. The passing game was kind of unique in how it worked out, but Ryan O'Keefe, although targeted 11 times, only had 56 yards. If you would have told me that going in, I'd have been very concerned. But he was an extension of the running game with those little just pop passes or just those jump passes and stuff you hear about, like just over the line. We'll go a little bit shorter. It's about a 1-yard catch, if you will. I mean, it's all but a handoff. He had multiple. And they also utilized him with just short passes in general out to the flat, and the extension of that is, again, the running game. But the most important note is Johnny Richardson, and I wrote about that first thing this morning on Inside the Nights. You can check out the article. Johnny had 147 yards from 14 carries. More importantly, it's how he established himself during the early portion of the first quarter that led to the overall accumulation of 147 yards. Against SMU, if you'll remember, there was a play early in the game on a third down where he had the opportunity to go past what would be a first down. He passed on it. He attempted to go around another player and hit a big play. Didn't work out for that, and Johnny didn't get a first down. They ended up punting, and of course, SMU just ran all over and passed all over the defense. It just wasn't a good day. But if you get a first down there, it changes the momentum of the game. Little things like that matter, and it's part of the maturation process. Richardson, 1 week later, just totally changed. Why? I don't know. But downhill Johnny is what I basically wrote in the article, and that was even a segment in the article. Downhill Johnny, 3 yards, 4 yards, it's okay. He kind of grinded it out. Now, he's not Isaiah Bowser, not saying that he is. Johnny is, however, a player that's very strong for his size. If you look at his legs, although he's a 5'7", 5'8" guy, he's put together. I'm not saying his legs are quite as big as somebody like Barry Sanders. He had huge legs, but he grinded out some yardage. And then it happened. He had a 38-yard run where, for whatever reason, the outside edge for the defensive end and outside linebacker for UConn was not covered. To the left, Johnny saw it, immediately took off. Boom. Foot and ground, upfield, right off that edge of the offensive tackle, and he gets a big play. He almost scored. But that play signified his maturation process, because maybe against SMU, he might have tried to do that with a guy standing right there. He bounces things every now and then, and he shouldn't. That was a good sign. And again, 147 yards rushing, scored on the first touchdown of the game, and he also had a reception for a score. Johnny is really a great compliment to Isaiah Bowser, who, by the way, real quickly, was warming up prior to the game, was in full gear. You could tell he was a little gimpy, though. He wasn't 100%. So we'll see what happens, but he should be able to play in some capacity against USF, I would imagine, this next Friday at 3:30 in the Bounce House. Yeah, Richardson had a 9-yard touchdown, and he also had the opportunity to score a touchdown a little bit later in the game on a 17-yard pass. Beautiful play action. Keene kind of rolled a little bit to the right and looked back left and hit him right in stride. Tremendous pass by Mikey Keene. And, of course, if you get somebody like Johnny Richardson the ball in space, good things happen. He ran it into the end zone for 6. UCF was up 28-0 after Richardson's pass. That was with 13:15 remaining in the second quarter. The game was over. They kind of coasted from there in a lot of ways, only scored another 21 points to 17 points for Connecticut. But in the final, quarter and 5 minutes, UCF rotated a lot of guys. They really did. With that being stated, I was just really happy with what they did in terms of effort. Defensively, let's talk a little bit about that. They didn't always have perfect run fits. They gave up a few runs that were disappointing, but the effort was there. Tatum Bethune was in double digits with tackles. They got after the quarterback. Defensively, I believe for the game was around 5 sacks they had. Yep, they had 5. They had 5 sacks. Powell, there's that guy again. He's had to play a little bit more with some injuries and different things that have come on. But it's good to see that it's going well again. Baptiste was banged up last week, and Powell had the opportunity to play, or excuse me, not banged up, but was out the second half because of the targeting call, and he had to miss part of the game. He was back in. He had half a tackle for loss and 1 tackle in the game, but they were rotating guys in and out. He didn't need to play really that much in the second half, so he got a little more extra rest, if you will. The other defensive thing that I noted going into the game is the defensive end should play well, and they did. But I think you can make a case now that the best defensive end on the roster, although it's still debatable, is Tremont Morse-Brash in terms of pass rushing. Like, he's just such a quick guy, that quick twitch right off the step from one all the way really till he hits the quarterback. It just seems like he accelerates. He can really go. When they rotate him in with Celiscar and with Big Cat, that's an SEC type of deal. That's the difference between winning and losing. It's the Jimmies and Joes, especially on defense. Celiscar is a good player. Big Cat's a good player. And Morse-Brash is a good player. You just rotate those 3 alone, and you're in pretty good shape. They'll have more guys come in, and they have recruits coming that'll help with that. But this is a very good sign. USF is not very good, but you still have to contain the quarterback, Timmy McClain, who I'll talk about a lot. He's actually an Orlando area guy. He played at Seminole High School up in Sanford. That's a player that you're going to see try to run around and get outside the pocket. Those DNs are going to be very important. So I'll get into that in the segment 2 here in just a second. But there's a lot of problems that can be had if you don't contain him. Finally, on defense, the picks. I wrote about this as well. I had a feeling that if they did get pressure, the quarterback was going to get antsy. It's just the natural thing that happens. Let's force one down the field. Devod Wilson got a pick. There were opportunities for, quite honestly, a few other. Devod probably should have had a second one. He was pounding his fist in the ground in the end zone on a second one later in the game. But the interceptions for Devod happened, and there was one for Devontae that probably should have been there, and he got it, but maybe he could have had another one even. There were just opportunities keeping going, And the one that was really cool, you don't see this every day in college football, but when you get an interception and you're a big guy, especially like a D tackle, not a D end, it's rare. Cam Good got a pick. That's cool. That's just freaking cool. So good for the big fella to get one. Usually, when they have one coming to their midst, it doesn't end up anywhere else besides the grass, and they don't catch it. But he did. So good on him. And I hope he got a game ball for that because that's really cool. But UCF overall in the pass defense, they mixed it up. Played a lot of different guys. Corey Thornton was actually back in the lineup. They brought Adams off the bench. I don't know if there's any particular reason for that, but they're both playing pretty well, so it really doesn't matter. And Adams came in pretty quickly. Overall, the defense just looked pretty darn good. They had, again, a couple of really poor run fits, which caused some issues. And the running back for UConn, although I don't know if he was heavily recruited, I liked him from a talent perspective. Carter had a long of 45, only had 77 yards overall, so 32 yards on 12 carries from his other 12, but he did pop the 45-yarder early in the game, though. They just completely shut him down, and that's when UCF built its lead because, like, in the first 3 possessions, I believe, they had 4 yards or 6 yards and a pick. I mean, it just doesn't get any more dominant than that by the UCF defense. Going into segment 2, and here is your question. Besides containing Timmy McClain, who's a freak athlete for USF, that is the obvious given, etc. Meaning contain, keep him in the pocket. Against Malik Cunningham earlier this year and some other guys that can move, UCF has struggled. That's the obvious. Let's move past that. Besides that, what other factors does this defense really need to take into consideration in not just slowing down USF, but having a similar performance to what it did against UConn in the early stages? A pick and 2 really, really bad plays that probably just by talent, UCF gets in the backfield, causes issues on the first couple of possessions. It screwed up the entire UConn blocking scheme. They did a great job. What can UCF do against their rivals from Tampa to make that happen again? Because obviously the UCF offense is playing well. If you give them a short field, you give them opportunities, they'll capitalize. They've done a good job of jumping on teams this year with or without Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. Mikey Keene is an opportunist. He's going to throw the football. They're going to come out and make an opportunity for themselves, especially if it's short field, to take shots. The big play down the field from, any perspective is always welcome. But if you get a turnover, a lot of coaches like to throw it over the top. I would love to see that opportunity, get the ball to number 1. Flash hasn't been quite himself yet, but getting the ball to him would be important. So segment 2. And this is something that can go either way. They say play with emotion. You're coming up on the biggest game of the year on your schedule in terms of a rivalry. We're 5 games from it, the war on I-4. How much emotion goes into it, and where does it need to level off before you go too far? USF is terrible. I believe they're 2-9. I mean, their statistics are so bad that it really doesn't matter. And I'll break them down for tomorrow on Monday morning before I go to Gus Malzahn's press conference. But how much emotion is too much? The teams don't like each other, as stated. Fans really don't like each other. The administrations probably aren't very friendly after at one point USF tried to keep the Knights out of the conference they were in, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of backfired on USF. And now, of course, the Big 12 has gobbled up UCF. It's ironic. And all this stuff is going to be played out on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. It's hilarious in its own way. So with that being stated, I'm just hoping that the players don't go too far. Administration and stuff too, don't be stupid, be adults. It's a great opportunity to play football in the state of Florida between 2 schools in Florida. Let's see it. Let's have fun and all that. With that, there are 2 players that I'm really interested in how the emotion plays into it. Number 1 is Big Cat. He's an emotional guy, very happy, very joyous personality. How he goes, a lot of times the UCF defense kind of goes. When he gets going early, and I mean early, like the first series, second series, if he gets a TFL or a sack, the defense really can come alive. I hope he's got it dialed in, and he's an emotional guy jumping around all the time. Anyway, that's just who he is. That's the first player I'm going to look at. Second, this team, for whatever reason, is playing a lot better pass defense. All the players really just seem to kind of understand the scheme better. But from an emotional standpoint, Justin Hodges is that guy. He got a pick yesterday as well. If he gets off to a good start, he's kind of the nickel, that extra guy that's, you got to play three corners pretty much anymore in college football, at least, even on 1st and 10 on the first play from scrimmage in a game, because everybody runs spread. That being stated, I don't know if there's a team in the country that's seen a guy can kind of take a rise, kind of like he did. He finally, I talked about it the last couple of weeks, and he finally got that pick, and he took the ball right over the guy. It was incredible play. Can he have a play like that early? The reason I bring up these two guys is that they kind of go in conjunction. Quarterback oftentimes will throw it up, just like UConn's quarterback did. If that happens, UCF's defensive backs have now shown we're going to take advantage. They're playing well in conjunction with one another, meaning the pass rush and the members of the secondary. If you get a true freshman quarterback like McClain to think instead of just play, he's going to make errors. This game could be a runaway. It could be 45-13. I mean, it could. But if you let him run around and get outside the pocket and just be an athlete, it can be a very close game really quick. He is a freak athlete. Make people look super, super bad. Freak athlete. One-on-one, he will not be fun to tackle. Must contain inside the tackle box. I'm going to say that about 500 times this week. And I'm sure the UCF coaches will multiply that number, by the way, because once he's outside the pocket, you're in a world of trouble. But if you can make him think, move his feet around, and he's looking down at the rush, then he starts throwing up, he could have 2 or 3 picks. Big Cat, Selascar, Montalvo, everybody involved has to stay in their lanes. Even if he'll get the sack, it might actually be better. Because if he thinks he's going to get hit, that's what he's really thinking about. It's just natural. Nobody wants to get hit. There's a really good chance he's going to toss 2 or 3 up that just aren't very advisable. So the war on I-4, that's what I'm going to talk about all day tomorrow on Monday on Inside the Nights on Fan Nation, powered by Sports Illustrated. Going to do a little history. Going to talk a little bit about the rushing attacks, some of the things you can look forward to. Going to do a little bit about McClain, the guy I was just talking about, the freshman from Seminole High School. But I'm really looking forward to that game, man. It's my first chance to cover it, and this is a fun rivalry, and it's one I can't wait to be a part of. So with that being stated, I'm hoping that everybody participates on Twitter and Facebook and everything and keeps it positive between the fan bases by and large. So everybody have a safe Sunday. Enjoy watching some NFL football. I will see you soon.